Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about some of the different questions I have coming out of week 5, and now we got to get into my top 12 teams in the country, and this was really, really tough to put together. Not just because of the crazy weekend that we just had, but I don't know if there are 12 teams that deserve to be on this list, and I know that sounds a little bit crazy, but there is some craziness up at the top, and I cannot get a beat on who is the elite team, who is the not so elite team, and it'll be interesting to find that out the next little bit. But let's go ahead and jump in here. And USC, I do have at 12. I think there's a team that I was really impressed with the win this past weekend, and I think there are worries. Don't get me wrong, there are some worries with the coaching over there right about now and the handling of some of these situations. But at the end of the day, they got punched in the mouth again in the first half and responded again, and they were able to get this win this time. So I think they're really impressive. It can't be said enough how incredible D'Anton Lynn's been for this team, and I think they're doing things that I didn't really think they were capable of doing. This defense is doing incredible things, and I think they did struggle in the first half, no two ways about that, but responding is a huge part of this game, especially in the Big Ten. They have everything still in front of them. Obviously, a huge one with Penn State coming up, but this is a really good team. I think I very well could have put Ole Miss here, but didn't feel great about that after this past weekend, so I'm going to put a USC at 12 and could very well flip around a number of different ways this upcoming weekend. And then I got Michigan at 11, the team that knocked him off. Michigan's just kind of plugging along. They are not playing great football, I'll be totally honest with you, but getting those wins does matter, and they know who they are at the very least. They know exactly how they're going to go about business. It just happens to be walking an absolute tightrope. You're going to have to be able to run the ball. You're going to have to be able to play elite defense, and if someone beats you over the top a couple of times, you're probably out of that game. So there's a number of things that Michigan's going to have to figure out, no doubt about it. But at the end of the day, when you're winning those games, I can't necessarily move you. So I'll roll with Michigan at 11 right now. I think another team that if they put on a performance like they did this past weekend, I'll probably drop them a little bit. Definitely a team that's worrying me a little bit, but I'll keep them right here for the time being. Missouri, I have at 10. They won because everyone else lost this past weekend. They were able to move up just a little bit in this one. I think this team has a ton of ability. I think they have every chance to be a really elite team this year, but as of right now, they're just missing the mark a little bit. They're not necessarily quite as explosive on offense, and we'll talk about that when we break down the A&M game tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but in the coming days, we'll break down that one, and it's going to be interesting to see what this team is about. I think there's a number of different things that could possibly go wrong. Even this upcoming weekend, it feels like kind of that Ole Miss game. And obviously, Missouri is more battle-tested than Ole Miss was going into that game, but a very tough defense on the other side. And if you can't get the ball down the field, it might just be a long day for Missouri and might just have their season be a little bit sketchy right about now in a week time. So it's going to be interesting to watch that team, but I'm a little bit skeptical. As of right now, they're handling business, so I won't move them, but definitely a little bit skeptical of what the Missouri Tigers can be this year. And then we got Clemson. I don't understand why Clemson is as low as they are in the AP poll. We are punishing a team for losing to Georgia in the first week of the season in Atlanta. It's absolutely insane. I think there were just a number of people that wanted certain things to be true about Clemson, and they're just kind of leaning into that right about now. So they're really impressive. They're handling business the exact way that you would expect them to, and the schedule is, I don't want to say easy, but kind of easy. Let's be totally honest. There are not a lot of games that they're really going to have to be worried about outside of Louisville and then South Carolina at the end of the year. They should be able to roll to an ACC title game. So it'll be really interesting to watch that team unfold. But as of right now, what we saw last week from Miami, what we saw the last couple of weeks from Clemson, that gap is shortening slowly in that conference. Then we got Oregon. I think this is one of those teams that's just finding it. They won 34-13 this past weekend over UCLA, handled business, and moved on forward. And that's exactly what they're going to have to do this upcoming weekend against Michigan State. And then they got the big-time one. They got Ohio State coming to town, and that's where this entire season changed. That's where this entire season changes from a kind of disappointing team that missed the mark early on in the season to a bona fide title contender, and we'll see what happens on that Saturday. I still have worries about this team. I think there are a number of things that you play an elite defensive line. Maybe that O-line looks a little bit more like it did in the first couple of weeks. Maybe you don't get the explosive plays that you need against Ohio State because that back end is so good. So there are a number of things to worry about this team, but at the end of the day, they are absolutely awesome, and they can do a number of different things this upcoming year. It's just going to come down to Ohio State in a couple of weeks. And then you got Miami, a team that is playing pretty good football, but they got away with one on Friday. Definitely a game that I don't think it was a catch. I'll be very, very clear about that. I do not think that was a catch. I do think at the end of the day they got it right. I also don't think if that's the way that we're doing business, if the way that we're doing business is the call on the field means the world, and I don't think it should be the way we're doing business, but it's the way we are. Probably should have stood. That's just the reality of that situation. That being said, the team won. They kept moving forward, and it cannot be said enough what Cam Ward has done for this team. He has given this team not only some incredible quarterback, obviously, but a confidence that they're playing with that they did not have in the past couple of years. Just plain and simple. Miami was missing that Miami of it all, and Cam Ward brought that back, and it's absolutely incredible to watch them go to work, and they're still the favorite in the ACC. Obviously, as I talked about, that Clemson gap is closing just a little bit, but definitely a really, really fun team, and cannot wait to see what they can do the rest of the year. Then I got Penn State at 6. I think this is a really, really solid team, and they're starting to answer some of my questions. I had worries about this defense after that Bowling Green game, and I still kind of do. When they play those really elite offenses that can hurt you in a number of different ways, it'll be interesting to see how they respond there. But at the end of the day, they're doing a lot of really, really nice things. Drew Aller's playing the best football that he's ever played by a pretty comfortable margin. The offensive line's playing really good football. They're getting those running backs involved. It feels like this team is kind of rounding into who they're going to be this season. It feels like they're finding who they are, what their kind of cadence is on offense, and the defense is starting to fly around, which is absolutely huge for them and something that they very much need going on the rest of the year. I have Georgia at 5, and frankly, them in Tennessee, I could flip as easily as I wanted. Like, I could put these teams in any which way. It's one of those things that I had to drop them, but I'm not worried about this team. I think they're going to be really, really good the rest of the season. Obviously, getting Tennessee at home is absolutely massive for this team. If Ole Miss is what we saw on Saturday, that game is not nearly as scary. And then obviously you have at Texas, which is going to be very, very tough. You could hypothetically fall in that one and still be very much in the playoff conversation. There is some talk about them being 9-3 and still being in the playoff. I have some skepticism about that. I think there are a number of teams that are just going to be crowding the top that it might be tough, but I will say, if any team in the country can be 9-3 and make it into the playoff, it's Georgia. So definitely a team that I'm watching very closely. There are issues that need to be fixed, no doubt about that, but Ryan Williams drops that ball, and we're having a very different conversation right now. So I'm not overly worried about this team. Obviously, some issues they need to fix on that back end, but being able to respond and take that lead is absolutely insane and something that they should at least be a little bit proud of. Not necessarily hang your hat on that by any means, but definitely something to take home with you. Then I got Tennessee at 4, and I think there's a team that just kind of handled business, and they got a really fun weekend just watching their two rivals just punch each other for 4 hours. So definitely was an incredible weekend for Tennessee, and I think this is one of the most consistent, dominant teams in the entire country, point blank. This has been one of those teams that has played really good defense, has been explosive on offense the way that we expected them to be, and has won games a number of different ways. Absolutely blew out NC State, handled business against Oklahoma in kind of a little bit of a rock fight, and I think took their foot off the gas a little bit in that game just to get that win. So it shows me that this Tennessee team is more complete than it has been in the past. They can play elite defense, they can run the ball, they can do all of the things that kind of hampered them in the past and definitely kept them from winning those big time games. So this is an elite Tennessee team. There's no two ways about that. Obviously some huge ones coming up, and we'll figure out what this team is really about in the coming weeks, but this is a great team. They got Arkansas this upcoming weekend, Florida, then Bama. Need to go at least 2-1 in that stretch, and they very well could. And frankly, I expect them to go at least 2-1, possibly 3-0 in that stretch. Then you got Ohio State at 3, and I think this is a team that we just saw what they can do against a team with the pulse, and it's dominate them the same way they did everyone else. They're an elite team in every sense of the word. These next 2 weeks, will really tell the tale. You have Iowa, and then you have Oregon. It's going to be interesting to see how this team handles it, and obviously is kicking up quite a notch from what they did the first month of the season, but Will Howard's finding it, and that's one of those things that you saw this quarterback come in and people had questions about what he can be in this offense. The reality is he can be a lot in a Chip Kelly offense, and he can do so many dangerous things, and one of those guys that if he finds his groove, if he plays with confidence the entire year, there's not a soul in the country that is going to be able to stop this Ohio State team and be able to beat this Ohio State team for sure. I do have Texas at 2, and frankly, I could have gone either way with Alabama and Texas here, but Texas does fall a bit, has very little to do with who they are. I think the one worry that I did have from this past weekend is the run defense is a little bit porous. I think Mississippi State was able to get their feet under them. Now, there's a couple of teams on the back end of that season that could expose that, but Texas will have some time to figure this out. I don't think Oklahoma is going to be able to run the ball really effectively, and then you do have Georgia coming to town. So you'll have to figure out this stuff, no two ways about that, but not super worried about this team. I think they haven't showed a ton of holes, and I think Mississippi State, more than anything else, was just trying to make that a game. I think they were just trying to make that look good, and they did that. No two ways about that. But Texas gets the win, continues to move on, and it sounds like Quinn Ewers will be back for OU, and they can get back rolling. And this is going to be a team that if they play that the way they played against Michigan, they have every claim to a national title going on the rest of the season. Then we got Alabama, the new number one team in the land, and frankly, I don't think there's an argument otherwise, but let's be honest. The win this past weekend proves a lot about what this team is. This coaching staff did an incredible job. Jalen Milroe put on the absolute show, and then they got 2 freshmen to take them home, which is just ridiculous. It's incredible what this team has been able to do in such a short period of time, and there are worries, no two ways about that, mainly their ability to keep on the gas, no two ways, definitely, but at the end of the day, this is one of those teams that absolutely can win a title. They have holes on the back end that need to be fixed, and definitely something that I'm a little bit worried about going forward, but an elite team, no doubt about it, and definitely one of those teams that you could look up in the second quarter of most of these games, and they're up by 28 points, and they're pretty much just playing their backups the rest of the game. So an elite team in every sense of the word, and my new number one team in the country. It was really hard to put this list together, I'll be totally honest with you guys, because at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of teams that are right on that fringe. I thought about putting Ole Miss in there, but I very much worry about that team's physicality going forward. I almost put Iowa State in there because they're playing really good football, and I feel like we should give them their flowers. But at the end of the day, I just couldn't pick them over any of those teams. So it's going to be an interesting list that definitely will take shape over the next little bit as we get deeper and deeper into conference play, but definitely a hard list to put together, and I can't imagine it's going to get any easier with the way the season is going. But that'll do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Thank you so much for tuning in. We had a really fun show this time, but please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It does make a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the social pages for all the content and updates you could possibly need. We have really incredible people doing awesome work across every single sport you could want. So anything in the world of sports you need, come on over to GSMC and we have you totally covered. But thank you once again for listening, and I will see you guys tomorrow.